the west, the south, the north, the east, everywhere in between. Salted meat.
Welcome to
Salted
Ramblemancy,
meat
everybody.
is... About to say salted meat as far as the eye can see.
Honestly, I was about to on it. That was a way better bit to come in on, because I was gonna come in and go like, "Welcome to Ramblemancy. We're here today to ramble." That's it.
Oh, I would have been here for that too.
Yeah.
Salted tinned meat. Yeah, exactly. Tinned meat. It's not tinned. It was in a bag, but bagged meat sounds like something else. So, anyway.
Listen, in order to prevent unwanted pregnancies, please bag your meat.
Let's not get banned super quickly.
First. Nope. Okay, anyway, sorry.
Welcome to Ramblemancy, everybody. I'm extremely tired. I have had zero to drink, but the level of sleepy that I am right now means that there's zero filter on this.
Oh my god. Completely unacceptable. Is our caption thing not working? Because I'm looking at it. The captions are working. I just don't know if the capture for the captions is working.
Oh.
No. I hope it's working. It'd be awfully rude of it if it wasn't. It had to be said. It was the natural conclusion of the bit. Yes, that's what I thought. I was like, the door is open. I'm just gonna walk through.
I don't know why the captions aren't working. They were working a second ago. I don't know.
Strange. But yeah. Anyway, I see. While you fuss with it. Hello, Matt, and hello, newly human. Thank you, Matt, for documenting that. It would not be a Friday evening on Ramblemancy if John didn't say something that he was going to regret later, and Matt clipped it.
Excellent.
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that that's where we went, but I am somehow.
Well.
Anyway.
So that's welcome to the show, everybody. It's Friday night. We're here.
That's the energy we're coming at you with.
Yep, it's true. It's true. I've been at a convention for a good chunk of the afternoon, running the booth. So
I've been at a festival for the last hour or two. So.
Yep,
it's a whole thing.
We're bringing the spicy energy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I've been working that same festival-ish.
It's very funny. So the reason for our weird energy at the beginning is because I was saying how this is not at all what we're talking about tonight, but I was saying how the internet likes to meme a lot of people and their ways of speaking, like speech patterns and stuff like that, like the stereotypical bro voice or the festival California girl voice, we all know the one. And sometimes it's really easy to think, wow, the internet likes to exaggerate a lot of these things. These people don't really exist, but they abso-fucking-lutely do, and nowhere is that more apparent than at a music festival. And
yeah.
Somebody unironically told my friend that his food looked fire, and I about ascended into the stratosphere. So, anyway,
man, it really truly is when you told me that, it took me back to 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritually, I was there.
Mm-hmm. Just like many of the people at this festival, spiritually never left Burning Man.
Yeah, exactly. And the thin layer of brown dust that covers them is a testament to that.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, to be clear, I'm not attempting to make fun of any of these people. It's just they truly and honestly fascinate me, and so that's it. I just enjoy people watching and meeting people who behave and speak in different ways than me that I do. It's truly just fascinating.
Mm-hmm. My entirely unrelated anecdote, not entirely, just along that line of watching people react to things. It's my favorite shit like when a child in a blow up Among Us costume walks around the corner and every single person shrieks like it's the imposter. You know you're at a that's like one of those you're at a convention when experiences.
That's awesome.
There's also like, and I know these are all games with very similar art styles, but like Genshin Impact and like Honkai Star Rail and stuff, there's a shitload of those cosplayers always just like trickling by. But also one of my favorite other people watching experiences is playing Spot the Homestucks at conventions. That's one of my favorite games. There are not many these days. There's not a lot of them, but there's always at least one of you. I will find. I'll be like,
there's one of
and and they'll be like, or they'll rush over and want to talk about Homestuck because like we seek each other out.
Yeah.
I even saw a couple of I saw a few Homestuck like original kids at Gen Con. That was
nice. That's awesome.
So yeah, someone I think even had John's big hammer, which I was like, yeah, good.
Hell yeah.
Like it's 2009 all over again.
Well, tonight we actually do have a topic tonight. And so tonight I'll tell you about that before I get into announcements, because there are a couple. But yeah, so tonight our topic that we're discussing, in the wake of, Baldur's Gate 3 coming out, we decided, like, we sort of found ourselves talking about the adaptation of like tabletop games to like a digital medium, and vice versa. We kind of found ourselves talking about that, and we figured there were enough examples of that like outside of Baldur's Gate 3 that we'd have plenty to talk about. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about tonight. But before we do that, I would like to give you some announcements, because we actually have them this time. We finally have a concrete filming schedule for Tomorrow is Dead Season 2. So, everything is in place. It's just, so yeah, the, like, filming for Tomorrow is Dead Season 2 begins on Monday. This coming Monday.
That's so wild.
That's so soon. We went from having no idea to having very clear idea in like 2 seconds. It was wild. But
it's kind of how it be sometimes. You have no idea what's going on until all of a sudden it's there and pow, you're doing it.
Yeah, so we'll be starting filming on that this coming week. And as I said, it will be like a pre-recorded thing, so it's not going to be airing soon. We'll get air dates to you as soon as we have them, but the goal is, because we're trying to navigate a bunch of people's complicated schedules and the the way that they communicate or don't with each other. And so we're trying to build up a few episodes, because we know that we're going to have a few dead weeks coming up where we won't all be able to like get together to record. So we're trying to build up some episodes so that, in as much as possible, we'd rather break up the recording schedule than break up the airing schedule, if that makes sense. So we're starting filming, but my goal, my hope, if everything goes according to plan, my hope is that we will start airing Tomorrow is Dead by Spooky Month. So as soon as October rolls around, that's when I'm hoping that we will start airing Tomorrow is Dead Season 2. So obviously I would have liked to have started way sooner than that, but since we're here and our filming schedule sort of lines up with that anyway, we decided might as well just kind of lean into it. So but yeah, so that's the update on Tomorrow is Dead Season 2. It's coming. It is coming right along, and I'm very excited for it. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, John, what do you got for us?
So I think I was the one actually who kind of pitched this topic this week, in large part because of an article that Lucas sent me that was about Baldur's Gate 3. And it was an article that I felt like kind of had a confused thesis, that I wanted to agree with several parts of it, but I just wasn't sure what it was arguing most of the time. But it did do what good writing theoretically should do, which it got me thinking. It really made me think. And that kind of got me just to thinking about all of the ways that we've seen like kind of crossover between like video game and video game elements and digital elements versus like analog, like role-playing games, which have historically been like a very analog hobby. I think the pandemic served as kind of a jumpstart to a lot of like virtual tabletop services and stuff like that, as everybody was all of a sudden like, oh, we can't do our very like communal hobby in person anymore, so we have to find ways to do it. And that, I think, maybe kickstarted some of this. But I don't know, it's just been interesting now looking beyond, like a step beyond, like, oh yes, this is just playing regular Dungeons and Dragons in a digital setting, versus looking at something like Baldur's Gate 3, which is like very explicit about the way in which Dungeons and Dragons like 5th edition mechanics are present. So I don't know, it was
going from like a change in medium of the actual physical tabletop to a change in medium of the game itself, basically, is kind of the distinction.
And it is like, there's certainly limitations to that, right? And again, we're kind of talking specifically Baldur's Gate 3 right now, but like it's D&D and role-playing games are like a kind of, in many ways like this inherently creative exercise. There's lots of like back and forth between you and the GM, be like, can I try this? And like bending of the rules and things like that. Whereas a video game tends to be like much more focused on like the actual like war gaming aspects of 5e, but it also like does those things, from what I understand, very well. Right. I also appreciate, from what I've seen, that basically every animal is voice acted, because you can cast speak with animals and talk to animals, and I think that's very good.
There's quite a few of them that will just straight up not talk to you, and the narrator just says, the animal just watches you silently. Like, sometimes that happens, but yeah.
The number of animals that are in fact voice acted makes me very, very, very happy.
I met a cat who didn't want me to look at it.
Please,
don't look at me.
The cat is me after doing conventions all weekend. Nobody look at me, please. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of fun to look at the differences in delivery, though, because like when you're playing a tabletop role-playing game, I think a lot of the fun that people find in those is the sandbox element, right? The ability to kind of do whatever I want and try all of like whatever I want in this game. And I think video games are more restrictive than that, but the upside is sort of that you get to play it just by yourself or couch co-op with like a friend. And you still get to have like
Gemini, thank you for 29 months. Thank you so much. Hello, Gemini. It's good to see you. Good to see you, friend.
But yeah, sorry, I saw there's a comment chat. At one point, my group made a spreadsheet to figure out a time that worked for everyone. Scheduling issues are always fun.
Yeah.
Filling out and reading when to meets.
It's especially fun when to meets limit how far out you can schedule things, and then I'm like, okay, well now I know that the next several weeks aren't going to work, but that doesn't help me figure out what days are going to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I think it's interesting because like when we were talking about having this topic on for this week, we were talking about how like there's like, yes, right now Baldur's Gate 3 is the version of what we're talking about that is in the zeitgeist, but there's been so many iterations of this, like going from tabletop to video game and video game to tabletop, right? Like Fallout is a great example. Fallout is a great example of how like it started out as a video game, but now there's a tabletop RPG by Modiphius, and I think it's Modiphius. Yeah, Modiphius. Who does the Fallout RPG, and like there's so many examples of that happening now that I think is like, I don't know. I don't know if I specifically have like a lot of things to say about it, kind of locked and loaded and ready to go, but I feel like there's definitely something to talk about there.
Yeah, I think there's like what I've been thinking about honestly is that I think there's something in the presentation of it because we've kind of always had these games, but we haven't been very explicit about the fact that these are kind of just like tabletop
Yeah,
games
like
without making the
KOTOR,
dice in front.
like Star Wars
Yeah.
Knights of the Old Republic, is very obviously to anybody who knows anything about like the 3.0 or 3.5 SRD, they know that KOTOR is based on it. But like it doesn't exactly advertise that fact, you know? Like they never advertise that fact because at the time like D&D just like and the D20 SRD really wasn't in the it wasn't really in the popular mainstream like it is today, so there would be no reason to advertise that.
Yeah. And like those systems like exist there already, they just don't show them to you, right? If you have an 80% chance to hit that then that means that if you roll a 16 or higher on the d20 then you hit, right? I can make a spreadsheet of hit probabilities based on your current stats, and it's
Yeah.
just the same as you rolling a d100 or a d20.
Yeah. And I
But
see. Yeah, and then of course, great examples in the chat. I saw Gemini mention both Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. Excellent conversions of Pathfinder to a video game. I have played the absolute fuck out of Wrath of the Righteous. I love that game so much. Like it has a special place in my heart. Kingmaker is a little harder for me to get into now that I've played Wrath of the Righteous. Even though I played Kingmaker first and I loved it, but yeah, but it's also a great conversion. Dragon Age, excellent example. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Because there's a Dragon Age RPG now too, like TTRPG. I forgot about that. I always forget about that one. But
I think it's something particularly about like very simulationist games that tend to translate well to video games, because video games like are this more kind of like inherently, I'm going to use a buzzword, railroady experience, right? You know, there's and just sort of because of the nature of video games, like there's only so many dialogue trees that I can put in this game. There's only so many like possible outcomes of interacting with this creature, and given that most of the things in 5e deal with combat, the most likely solution to most of your problems is going to be violence. So that's where I spend most of the time filling out the game, right? Which still results in very silly things. Like I saw a TikTok video of somebody pointing out the best strategy for dealing with any problem, which was casting Enlarge on an owl bear and dropping it on your foes.
Oh, I saw that too. Cast Enlarge on the owlbear, build a stack of crates, send the owlbear flying down and slam onto whatever enemies down there, do 6 bajillion points of damage.
Yeah, exactly. Which, like, again, I appreciate, like, that to me, that's still a very fundamentally D&D experience. Like, it's instead of arguing with your game master for like 15, 20 minutes, like, okay, so we put all of those boxes into the bag of holding. And if I get all of those boxes out right now, and we put the owlbear like at the mouth of the bag of holding, and I hold my action to cast Enlarge on it, and the DM's just like, roll me a whole lot of d20s.
It's like that time that I decided instead of trying to banish a whole ass Freeman's gonna know exactly instead of trying to banish a whole ass phoenix back to the fire elemental plane of fire and risk it not working, we decided to try to lure it into a bag of holding, then banish the person who was holding the bag of holding with the phoenix inside of it. It would go there, and then they would sit there with the bag open, so the phoenix would fly out to escape the bag of holding, and then hopefully then we would end concentration early on banishment and bring the person back, hopefully without the phoenix. And because banishment was only cast on the person, then technically by the rules the phoenix would not come back with banishment and would in fact stay on the, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that
like
kind of bullshit.
Kind of, and then like your screen goes all wonky, and then you clip through the floor, and
yeah,
every good plan hinges on hopefully. Yeah,
it's true. Sometimes that not even the good plans hinge on hopefully. Sometimes the really bad plans hinge on hope. No, I feel like, but you're right though, because like I feel like even as recently as last night in our home D&D game, we had a similar thing where like a player was like, "Well, these gnolls are driven by hunger, right? So like, what if I cast prestidigitation to make them smell tasty to each other, and then the druid used gust of wind to like spread it around and
Yep.
then
For
make them
real.
fight each other and eat each other.
Well, like somebody did exactly that with they summoned some kind of swarm of things, and there were a bunch of like skeletal dogs or something like that that had been reanimated, or wolves that had been like reanimated by a necromancer or something. And they're like, I'm gonna make all of these like this rat swarm that I summoned smell super tasty, and I'm like, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense actually. You've just made a bunch of super tasty smelling prey animals.
There it is. But yeah, I feel like I was going to make a point about something you said earlier about Oh no, I remember what I was going to say. It was in response to what Coops said in chat, which is I played KOTOR before playing 3.5 and then realized what it was after I started playing it. I was the same way. I had no idea what half of the things of the terminology meant, so like I was trying to min-max, but I didn't know what anything actually did. I was just like, this number, like this says armor. I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool, so I'm just going to make that number really big. And like, this says attack. What's the difference between attack and damage? I don't know. I'm just going to maximize both numbers, and I'm just going to make both numbers real big. And I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah.
Yeah. It's like it feels like it's kind of all in the presentation, because these games I think have kind of always existed, like the RPG genre. Like there's always the hidden die rolls behind the screen, whether it's dialogue trees, whether it's like the very like Fallout or KOTOR like hit and miss chance when you're attacking stuff. You know, it's the same as if you're repeatedly rolling a D20 or a D100, but
Yeah.
you know, it's just that in Baldur's Gate, when you do that, because it's very explicit about its association to 5e, they show you a big D20 on screen that rolls and then adds your modifiers for you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I feel like it's funny because that's an interesting point that I really didn't think about, but you're absolutely right. Like the way that Baldur's Gate has, as opposed to some of these other games that we're talking about, Baldur's Gate genuinely doesn't even try to hide the fact that it is just D&D, to the point where even the map, like the mini map, if you look closely enough at it, you can see a grid on it. And like I think that's cool. Really interesting. Like, it doesn't give you a grid when you're in combat or anything like that, which is probably fine, because I think it would be too visually confusing. But yeah, like, but you can see a grid on there. Like, there are lots of things that I think a game that wasn't explicitly based on a tabletop game would probably not be able to get away with. Because it would make it seem way too janky and too, like, whatever, but it's... but yeah... But I think you might be right, or you might be onto something there, John, about talking about the fact that like that these have always been here. It's just that now, at least with Baldur's Gate, we're seeing an example of them not even trying to disguise the fact that it's based on the tabletop game. And in fact leaning into the experience of playing the game at the table, but in a video game form.
Yeah. And like I don't know. I think it's cool to see that. I think I think, you know, it makes for I think like an easier transition from one part of the hobby to the other, right?
Yeah.
I think somebody who plays a lot of D&D but doesn't necessarily play a lot of video games might be like, "Oh, Baldur's Gate looks like it's for me," or vice versa. Somebody who plays a lot of video games and likes role-playing games and stuff like that plays Baldur's Gate and they're like, "Oh, wait, hold on. You know, this is just Dungeons and Dragons," and then the next time their friend's like, "Hey, so I'm putting together this D&D campaign. I'm putting together a team."
I don't know though, because like I like D&D obviously, but and from what little I have played of Baldur's Gate so far, like it is very reminiscent of D&D in terms of like the aesthetic and like turn order, but that's really hard to do. Like I'm really like spoiled by live action like role playing, like Skyrim, for instance. But when it comes to this type of game, I'm a little bit turned off by the turn order. which is weird because when we do it regularly for our
Yeah.
in-home game, it's like not a big deal. It's part of it, and it really requires, for me, it requires um, like other folks being in the game with me to like
Mm-hmm.
make that a thing. And like I feel like this game would be a lot of fun if I were playing it with other folks
Mm-hmm.
because of that like little bit of thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
translation issue.
I I definitely hear that. Just so happen to really enjoy the tactical aspect of it, but that's, hey, surprise, the Forever GM really likes the tactical combat gameplay. What? Um but
What?
like you're right though. Like I've so far played Baldur's Gate with one other person. Um and it was a really fun experience. I enjoyed it. I don't think a lot of what I will say the downside of it was is like combat was interesting because then you get a lot of like cool tactical options and you're like supporting each other and like doing stuff and there's like you can create some really cool synergy. What sort of suffers unfortunately in the multiplayer, at least maybe this is just my experience so far. Maybe other if anybody else here has played it and you guys like have a different experience, weigh in because I'm curious to see if this is like universal or if there's like was just my experience. Um but what I found was on the role playing end of things, it tended to suffer because of the way that it handles dialogue, where like only the person who initiates dialogue is like the active participant for the dialogue, and like the other party members can vote on a dialogue option, but like the final arbiter is always the person who initiated the conversation,
Interesting.
and that's the person who is being who is which I guess is how it also works if you're playing by yourself and you choose one of the other characters, like not your main character, you choose one of the other characters to like head the conversation. It does still work that way, so I guess it's not that different. I don't know.
Well, here's the
Maybe
thing.
this is nothing.
Here's the
Maybe
thing,
everything I said
though.
was nothing. Yeah, go ahead.
Because like when you're playing D&D with friends with your group, everyone is kind of like pitching in and like making things
Yeah.
happen and contributing. But when you play like a TTRPG game that's been translated to a video game that could be solo, you can like make all the choices and decisions yourself and kind of make the flow of the game a certain way, perhaps.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's that too. I didn't think about
Yeah.
that until right now.
It's true. Well, and then I think for me, it's just slightly immersion breaking, I guess, when like when you're playing with somebody and like you feel like they would be involved in this conversation, but the game doesn't treat it that way. That way,
Right.
but like
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's just like me being
Interesting.
really nitpicky about things, but I don't know. It's not like a huge deal breaker. I think it's still a fun game to play with friends, but um,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the it was probably I think it is a game that feels like it was primarily designed as a single player experience. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of role playing games like this do tend to be
mhm.
right. You know, I most of the things in this vein tend to be single player or like two player co op at most.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that is an interesting like translation issue between this genre and like actual tabletop RPGs, which are very common thing. Because I think you're right, Freeman. I think there is like a bit of a translation issue between like there's a difference between sitting at a table playing D&D and watching other people take their turns in combat and then deciding what you want to do versus like layering all of your turns together in the order
Mm.
and then push and go, right? It's those are two kind of like different experiences. Both of them involve like tactical gameplay, but um one of them like explicitly asks you to be making all of those decisions instead of just, you know, making some decisions and responding to others.
Mhm.
And they're absolutely like we're not saying that this is not like they're both absolutely valid like ways of playing a game. Absolutely. Like I I just like I'm not used to one version of it, you know what I mean? Um
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
But I think they're both absolutely valid. Like obviously I've played more D&D in person than I have played like turn-based RPG games
Mhm.
via like video games.
Yeah.
Uh but I think they both are like they have they absolutely have a place 100%. It's just like preference, I think.
Yeah.
And perhaps just like being used to one, which isn't entirely fair, but it is what it is for me. Being like there is one like couple of versions of games that I'm very used to playing, and so like it might just take a little bit of time for me to kind of ease
Mm-hmm.
into it, and maybe with like some folks. And I do
Yeah.
have the game, and I have like played through some of the beginning part, and I do look forward to actually like trying this game out when I actually building a character and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because like you're, and I think you're essentially right because thinking about it, like as you were talking, I was thinking about how like some of my earlier game experiences, not like my earliest, but definitely like around the time I was like, I want to say maybe like 10 or 11 or so, is when I first played my first CRPG, right? Like like top down isometric party based kind of RPG, and like genuinely that still is one of my favorite games of all time. It's on I have like the physical copy of it, and it is now on Steam, and I want to get it because and it's super cheap. There's literally no reason I should not get. I just want to. Anyway, my point is that
Mm-hmm.
that game, which was like the first game that I played of that genre, I think was became quickly one of my favorite games of all time, and it truly I think informed the rest of my like the way I look at video games.
Interesting.
Because yeah, there was a time I think where I was sort of in the same boat too, Freeman, where like I was much more interested in the like more kind of action heavy, like direct action, like not non turn based games like Skyrim and those kinds of RPGs. But interestingly, it's my interest in TTRPGs that actually have increased my interest in like the tactical turn based
Oh,
RPGs,
cool.
RPG like video games. But yeah, what's up,
It's
Hermes?
hello.
Um, sorry, what
It's
were you saying,
definitely
Freeman?
interesting because I wonder like because I don't know if that there are any like any like versions of Skyrim that come out that will be like that, but that's how I sort of imagined Skyrim would be. Because how else would you do unless it was more like a if they based it more survival like a survival game where everyone's like on their own. You know what I mean? Like how we play um 7 Days to Die or
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
my point. I lost my point already. I'm very sorry. I'm just like
We're all
which
so
is
like
very not helpful.
we're all so like shot from like Freeman working at during a festival, John going to a con and working at the con, and me just attending the festival. Our brains are
Mhm.
just like I realize that
Slush.
mine is like different because I wasn't working there, but like there were so many people and just so much like there was information overload, and like even as an extrovert I will say like I was fine while I was there, but as soon as I left my brain everything blurred around me. I was like, what is happening?
I know. I took a lift home from the hotel where the con was because we took one car over there, and I didn't think about that this morning. Again, brain slush.
Mm-hmm.
But so I on the way back, like my driver was talking to me, and I fully do not remember a single thing that we talked about because I was just like half asleep in the back seat, like, oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah.
yeah. No, that one's in the convention center, I think.
Hmm.
Like,
Yep.
Closing your eyes for a little bit when you can.
okay, Ted, I lost my
Yeah.
point already is such a real brain moment. Listen, one of the stickers that we sell at our booth is just like a little like blue and orange striped pillow, like, and it just has the word "sleepy bitch" behind it. And
Yep.
we keep it right at the front edge of the table because there are so many people who will walk by and see that when they stop to look
Mm.
at our stickers. And we'll just be like, "Oh wow, that's me," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's us too, and that's why we made it."
Yep.
It's a perpetual mood.
um I'm trying to think kind of coming back to the
Mm-hmm.
the whole translation thing with. I'm just thinking about like it's so interesting that we have this like long history of interplay between the analog tabletop game, the digital like virtual tabletop, which is just the like digital version of it's just like the one to one, right? And then the video game aspect, which is basically the only way that that is different from some of the VTTs that are coming out today, particularly like the 3D ones like RPG Stories and Tailspire and stuff like that, is that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't require another like other people because the game handles being the NPCs and also the DM, like with the
Yeah.
story and stuff like that. And so I just think it's interesting that like I can't like with a lot of other things like that we can pinpoint like oh it started here and then it went to this and then it went to this and now we have all three. But in this one, I mean like obviously you can pinpoint like tabletop games absolutely came first, obviously. But my point is
Right.
as far as like adaptations, we kind of have been going back and forth like with no real like direction because there's been video games that have made it into tabletop games made it into video games, then we've got the virtual tabletops for different like games and whatever, we've got the virtual tabletops for board games, for TTRPGs, for like all kinds of shit, and it is truly like this lawless back and forth, everybody is adapting constantly into in either direction, which is really cool and interesting. And I'm not sure that you can say that about too many other things that are swapping like media, you know?
Yeah, like I don't know, like play is such an like role playing is such an interesting space because like the way that a video game designer solves a problem is different than the way that a tabletop designer solves a problem is different than the way that a board game like designer solves a problem. But like we can all look at how the other solves a problem and be like, "Oh, I bet I could jury rig that into
Yeah.
my role playing system because like, I can look at something like and this is fairly light on the role playing in terms of this, but like I can look at something like Destiny 2 and my like a game designer brain will start worrying and being like, "Okay, well what's essential about playing a guardian in Destiny 2 that makes it feel so cool and powerful?" And then I can think of, okay, well, how can I translate that experience, that power fantasy, into another format? And like that's how you get this really cool
Mm-hmm.
interplay. So it's really neat.
Yeah. Well, and I
Oh.
think it's so this is interesting. Like, so first of all, I want to respond to what you said, but I'm Hermes. I saw your comment. I'm coming back to it because I got something to say about that. So first of all, John, I think it's really interesting because I also do that. Like, I'll be playing a video game, and I'll be thinking, "Oh, this is a really cool mechanic that they've got in this game. I wonder if I can translate that into my TTRPG, and how could I like?" It really is truly like like we use the word translates like casually and colloquially, but I mean it literally. Like, how can I literally translate it? Because it's like you're taking something from one language and putting it in a different language, right? The language of video games and transferring it to like translating it to the language of TTRPGs, and that is genuinely what it feels like because you're like, okay, well, there's not a direct one to one for this particular thing in this language, so how do I say this in this language? And it really does feel like a translation thing sometimes. And so as
Mm-hmm.
you're like I've definitely done the same thing, and it's true because there are things that video games can get away with that a TTRPG cannot get away with, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa, right? And that's where I think Freeman was like Freeman, your like friction with the with Baldur's Gate comes in because there's certain things that like that the TTRPG does for you that when the same thing exists in a video game, it just doesn't do the same thing for you, and in fact achieves the opposite, right? And I think that's very interesting. Um,
Yeah, and like the to like finish out that point, like the kind of combat that exists in Destiny 2 is very hard to replicate in tabletop form because if
it
you're
is.
replicating hordes of enemies coming at the people who are playing, managing all of those resources with pen and paper and a character sheet and die rolls um, are things that like get very like very tedious very quickly. But on the board game side of the spectrum, that's a little bit less because like people are, I don't know, it's different. Like the buy-in for different kinds of games is different. But like if we're talking about making a Destiny 2 combat encounter 1-to-1 in an RPG, that's a lot of tracking numbers.
Yeah.
Right? That the game is handling for you, which is what for the video game makes it feel really fun and cool.
You end up with the same kind of friction using the language analogy, continuing the language analogy. It's like when I'll be watching a show and they have people speaking in Spanish and they'll say something that I'm like, okay, I understand how you got there from English, but that is not how a native Spanish speaker would say that. Like, that is nonsense in Spanish. I understand how you got there with a literal translation from English, but that's nonsense in Spanish. And so it's a little bit that. It's like Freeman's experience is a little bit like the native TTRPG speaker is saying, like, okay, I see how we got here, but this is nonsense in video game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And a big part of it for me too is my I don't really have like a video game. I don't have video games in my past, like growing up, like a formative video game type, because I feel like a very brief moment for a few seconds, it felt like part of what we were talking about earlier was like formative video game media, like,
right.
And I did not have or look for or whatever. It was just not available for me personally. Video games were not available when I was younger. I didn't really do video games until later on, and that was because I would just play video games wherever someone else had them.
Right.
And that's when that was a thing that like happened in high school, like later high school. And then the more so later on, once we started like play, you and I, Lucas, started playing more video games. Like I watched you play Minecraft, or not Minecraft, Skyrim. Well, before that, we played Minecraft though. So
we did, yeah.
We did a lot of both, and that happened. And I feel like that's why Skyrim. I talk about Skyrim so much, is because like that's like
Skyrim kind of was one of your formative games.
It's Skyrim is to you as Super Metroid is to me. You know, like I won't shut up about Super Metroid and Metroidvanias because that's what like that was my formative video game experience, right?
Yeah. And mine is like probably Skyrim and Minecraft somewhere in there because they were both not at the same time, but they both were present, heavily present in my time, in the time I was doing video games. Rather.
I wanted to go back to what Hermes said in chat here, because Hermes said, for me, a TTRPG video game really needs to be turn-based. I want more time to examine what's going on. Mad props to Skyrim and the predecessors, but give me a straight turn-based. And I think that's really interesting because I wanted to mention that specifically because I like the more kind of like action-y RPGs, right, where it's much more focused on like your like the player's skill, right, or even like the character's skill levels, right, like where damage will be based on your character's skill levels, and I do like that a lot. The like non-turn based kind of stuff, I do think that's one of those things that for me it's really cool. But I agree with you that if it is an RPG based on a TTRPG, I think I also need it to be tactical. I would think it was weird playing a Skyrim-style game set in the Forgotten Realms. That would be strange to me. I would be playing and I'd be like, I don't... It's one of the reasons I think why... Well, it's one of the many reasons that I bounced off of Neverwinter. Because A, Neverwinter's not that good of a game. B... it really just doesn't feel in any way like a TTRPG. And I feel like MMOs particularly have this problem. Like, a lot of MMOs have been based on TTRPGs, and it just doesn't work because it doesn't feel in any way like the TTRPG. And I think that's one of these tensions that we're talking about, right? Like, when we go, like, from translating one-to-one, you can't go, like, you can translate it into a similar language or a like similar cognate in the other medium. But if you start trying to make it into something, I don't know. Maybe I'm also saying nothing. I feel like a Skyrim style D&D game might be interesting, but not if they tried to also do some of the mechanics. It wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the point of like when you're talking about MMOs, I think the point of friction is that like those games must end the same way for everyone, right? One person's hometown can't look different than another person's like hometown because like all of the same NPCs must still be present in more or less the same places for players to like interact with the game. And also like tabletop RPGs don't have something that basically MMO has, which is a gear treadmill.
Yeah.
Where you're grinding to, you're level 10 and now you've outdated your gear from level 5, and so you got to go get some new pants, and like, that's not really how D&D works, or how like tabletop role-playing games works. And so I think that's like a big point of friction when you try to go like, oh, tabletop game, you're like, oh, a tabletop role-playing game is a sandbox. Well, so is our MMO. Well, yes, but not really in the same ways.
Yeah, exactly. I think D&D Online, like the super old like D&D MMO based in Eberron, actually came pretty close because they don't disguise the die rolling mechanic. Like the die rolling mechanic is there. It's just based on 3.5, which itself is a very crunchy, noodly system. And then on top of it, they added MMO crunch to it as well. So everything increases by like little little get the fuck out of here, Matt. You missed me with that shit. I see you. No, but then they added MMO crunch on top of it so that there was like these like 0.05% increase to this. It's like, stop. Please stop. We don't need to be doing that. We truly don't need to be doing that. And so yeah, it's just weird. And I think that they came close. Like I said, they have a die rolling mechanic in it, and they don't disguise the die rolls and those sorts of things. But they took an already crunchy system and they just smashed MMO crunch on top of it. And I really don't think they needed to do that. Like, that's my biggest... I know that's not what we're talking about, but my biggest issue with MMOs, a lot of MMOs, is particularly, like, the World of Warcraft era MMOs, is that they are really, truly concerned with, like, fractional percentage increases. And I'm like, I cannot tell you, as somebody with ADHD, I cannot tell you how little I care about this 0.025 increased percent chance to hit. Okay, I literally could not care less. I truly... And it's like, give me whole goddamn numbers, please.
Yeah, give me like that. I don't know, and that's one of those things where it's just like, yeah, with video games in particular, if I see +1 on like my D&D character sheet, I'm like, oh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
don't need to look at a spreadsheet to understand that +1 to hit is pretty fucking great.
I don't need to go get my computer science major friend to come look it over and tell me if I'm doing a good job at doing the character.
I don't need a third-party like build planning tool to tell me whether or not that +1 breaks my character build. Yeah. But with MMOs, it really does feel like, especially some of them that are like that, where it's like, yeah, this is going to be your 0.5% increased damage, and the developers are like, yeah, but that's so much, and I'm like,
yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
I just hit that guy for 6 million damage. Like,
yeah. You don't like doing differential equations to figure out your crit chance? Weirdly, I do not.
As it turns out. Listen, Matt, as somebody who has played like maybe 5-digit hours of Path of Exile, miss me with that shit now, man. I'm so tired.
I play video games to avoid doing taxes. I didn't want to come here and do them too.
Right.
Oh. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. Or he said, it's like going to the store and something is 10% off. So literally nothing. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
It's
almost like
buy 7 get 1 free. It's like I only wanted the 1.
as someone who fucking loves a spreadsheet, no,
Yeah,
no, I
taxes the
don't.
TTRPG
I was
experience.
just gonna say taxes, the video game, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was so mad when I learned about the math in D&D. Honestly, that one doesn't bother me as much because like and maybe it's just cuz like I'm on the GM side of things, but I like knowing what a +1 means. +1 means that you're 5% more likely to hit. That's I don't mind that. I like that math. That's easy enough for me.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
I think
but
that
yeah.
math definitely like is different for different folks, and especially I don't know. Since I love TTRPGs and playing them, I also don't mind that kind of math.
Mhm.
It's all the other math that I don't care about
Right.
because
And
I
the
don't
thing
love that subject.
and weirdly, you know what? I think that's actually a good point though, Freeman, because I think I would care a lot more about the math in MMOs if I understood what the system was, but the system is all hidden, right? Like so much of the system in
Ah,
MMOs is hidden, and so it's like you get like this plus this much percent to hit, and you're like, great, I have no idea what the fuck that means. Like that means
Yeah,
nothing to me.
what's X? What's Y? No.
and I like this brings us back around to what I was talking about earlier with like the
Hmm.
presentation of information,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when I open my character sheet in D&D, I'm like, let's double back to 3.5 for a minute, which had, you know, variable crit chance on weapons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And various things. I don't think spells had crit chance in 3.5.
Yeah.
I
Maybe
don't think
some
so.
did.
I don't think so. Maybe with meta magic, but I don't remember. But
Yeah, I think there were like some meta magic feats that you could take to give your spells crit chance. But
yeah,
anyway,
maybe. But I think
you
spells
know,
pretty much exclusively crit on a 20.
yeah.
So
So, back in 3.5, weapons had different crit chances. So like I think basically every weapon critted on a 20 and, failed on a 1, just as things do now. 5% chance to super succeed, 5% chance to super fail.
mm-hmm.
And but there were some weapons, which I think like falchions were one of them, that
Rapiers
had
were
like
like
an 8.
nuts.
Yeah, rapiers were like an 18 to 20 crit range, and then you could
Mm-hmm.
take a feat that would double the crit range to make it like fucking 14 to
You
20 or something.
genuinely, I think 15 to 20 is the highest crit range that I've ever seen, and it was in fact on a rapier.
Yeah,
Or
which
yeah.
is straight up a 25% chance to crit.
Well, it's
Which
different. Not to get into like the noodly whatever, but like genuinely, it's different because it was like 25% chance to threaten a critical, because then you
right,
had
and
to
then you had to
confirm your
confirm the
yeah.
yep.
So
Which again, if you played Path of Exile like I did, there's critical chance and then there's accuracy chance, which is exactly the same thing. If you roll a critical and then you check your accuracy, you hit, but then you check your accuracy, and if your accuracy hits too, then you deal critical damage. But like,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. Even then with 3.5, it's like, okay, well, if I roll this on the die, then I get a critical strike and then I deal 2x damage. And that's like fairly transparent. And even in 5e, it's like you roll a 20, you roll double the dice. Good time.
yeah,
Um and I think that like that's fairly like that's clear, that's straightforward, as opposed to like looking at your MMO character sheet where these systems are obscured and it's like, okay, well your character has this base damage which is hidden, and then you have like these numbers that are like modifiers that you can see on your skills, and those
Hmm.
modify your
Right.
base damage, which is hidden.
yeah.
And
That's
then
exactly it.
this goes through like a complex equation that takes into account your character's level, the level of the enemy that you are fighting, the level of the zone, whether or not there's a zone cap. And there's like 75 different like little things that go into this
Hmm.
differential
Well,
equation to
and that's the
determine whether or
thing.
not you deal 15 or 75 damage to this guy.
Right, and that's the thing. It like the way that like particularly World of Warcraft MMOs function is that the system is hidden. It would be the equivalent in a TTRPG if your character sheet all it had was like the stats and things like that, like just the numbers, which it does, but like you weren't rolling the dice, and in fact you didn't know what die was being rolled. And like the like basically the way that D&D some people played D&D like way back in the days of like first and second edition where like where the DM rolled all the dice, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like it would be like that where like the player had just had the character sheet, and that was the only information they had available, but they had no fucking idea what any of it meant. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know how their percent chance to hit is calculated. They don't know how they're like, and that's what playing an MMO feels like to me, where I just see all these like numbers. I'm like, I truly don't care. And the thing is, you really don't have to in an MMO, because basically you're just like, this is the stat that pertains to the thing that you do. So all you want to do is make that stat bigger, and that's all you care about. And you don't care about how it's calculated or why the number needs to be bigger. You just know your number needs to be bigger, and so you're gonna make bigger numbers. But yeah. Oh, Hermes,
So
have a
good night, Steve.
Thanks for
Good
coming
night.
and hanging out. But yeah. But no, I agree with Newly Human, who said, honestly, the math and numbers don't bother me. The thing that turns me off is complicated submenus. My D&D character sheet may have a lot of information on it, but it's simple. Exactly. That's exactly it. Like, there's a lot of math, a lot of numbers, but it's all very simple and straightforward once you know, like, it's all based on this D20, and, like, that's it. Yeah.
Do you want to know the thing that honestly, there's two things that Animal Crossing is an amazing game, and I had a good time playing it, but the two things that turned me off of Animal Crossing, one was, for some reason, games with a real 24-hour day-night cycle where I have to go to the store before the store closes in-game, and the in-game clock is the same as my real-life clock. That gives me real-life chore anxiety. And that's a me problem. But, like, I'll be like, oh, shit, if I want to play Animal Crossing, I have to play it before 10 p.m. so that I can go to Tom Nook's and sell all my stuff for the day. And I'm like, oh, no, that's a real thought that I have, Jonathan, about going to the grocery store to buy food for the week.
Yeah, that's... yeah.
These things butt heads. And the other thing was menu navigation. I had to do so much of it just to do stuff in Animal Crossing. I wound up doing that, Kate, but I think the other thing, there was a consistent problem, like how many menus I had to navigate to take any action, and that's the stuff. It's what kind of turns me off of Final Fantasy XIV too as an MMO, because that has, I just feel like I need to know a lot of keyboard shortcuts to pull up the right submenus automatically. Otherwise, I have no idea how to get to them.
Well, it's so interesting too, right? Because like you're talking about like being in menus, and I'm thinking about the Pathfinder games, specifically Wrath of the Righteous, but not exclusively. Kingmaker has this issue too, where you spend a lot of time in menus, and that's like what you're doing most of the time. And I don't mind that. And I think about it like, because there are a lot of options, and I think the thing that makes that I really like about it is the fact that there's a near infinite number of combinations, which means that in that number of combinations, like finding the exact combination of stuff to do just busted ass shit that you like sort of put together and just sort of cobble together some weird amalgamation of a character, I think is very cool. And but then I think, but can't you say that also about Path of Exile? Why do I not like it there? And the answer is too many options. I like having a lot of options. I do not enjoy having infinite options. I like being able to I like having a lot of options with which to create infinite outcomes. I do not like having infinite options with which to create infinite outcomes that are largely the same in most instances.
The result will be that all of the monsters on this screen are disintegrated within seconds, but if I combine all of these pieces in a near infinite number of incorrect ways, I will do all of those things badly instead.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, exactly. And at a certain point, there's only so many versions of, like, how can I combine these things to do 6 bajillion thousand damage to everything on the screen? And really the difference ends up being, does everything on the screen get obliterated in 0.0035 seconds or 0.0038 seconds? And
yeah. And yeah, Path of Exile is definitely unique, and like there is something different. I don't know. There's something different about sitting down for something like for sort of like for something for like Baldur's Gate or Dungeons and Dragons to try and solve that encounter with the tools that you have at hand, which are more limited, right? Which I think is kind of nice. And it really it depends on what you want out of the game. I think that like that more limited way to engage with it helps like focus your like build crafting, the way that you approach the management of your resources, whereas when you have like infinite supplies to create infinite outcomes, it's like oh shit, oh fuck, like
suddenly choice paralysis comes in. You're like, oh god, I don't yeah, and you just don't do anything, and then you close the game after playing it once and never open it again. Not based on a real example. Anyway, but yeah, like I think it is interesting too, because like I feel like ARPGs are sort of a different part of this entirely that is not entirely related. Like there's like a weird with action RPGs. I feel like there's like a weird like they're sort of based on like the idea and aesthetic of TTRPGs, but ARPGs, while many of them look like CRPGs, are in no way the same thing. Because like one of them, like the CRPGs tend to be much more tactical and more like, you weigh your limited options and figure out how best to apply each one to a given situation and in combat or otherwise. Whereas ARPGs is how can I do the maximum, most busted amount of damage as quickly as possible because I don't have time to think because there are 3,000 things approaching me on the screen at any given time. And like
ARPGs, like the Diablo genre of games, and I think it's fair to call it that because Diablo kind of was the founding entry in that genre. Like isometric action RPGs, which is to say games that are set kind of at a like tilted camera angle, so that it gives a feeling to the 3D geometry. That like hack and slash kind of game is built really specifically for one kind of experience, and that's I would like to put my barbarian in this room with 6 billion demons and walk out with 0 demons and 6 billion loots. And that's the ARPG experience. They've really it feels almost like they took, we have like okay, like D&D to like a Baldur's Gate to like an MMO to and like we have like these kind of abstractions from one system to another, and you can point to the things, and it's just like okay, I like hit monster and I like get loot, and those are the things that I want to do.
They replaced all thought in the game with gigantic numbers.
I wish that I could tell you that that's not the case, but I do love filling up my Fury bar in Diablo and then pushing the button that says Hammer of the Ancients and then watching a bunch of gigantic orange damage numbers appear on screen.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You do all of your thinking before the fight happens, so that when you come to the fight, the only thing that happens is a big number.
Exactly. Whereas like turn-based RPGs, you do a lot of your you do it in both places.
Yeah.
Right. You do a fair bit of your thinking like in the pregame when you're like, okay, like which party members do I want to bring for this encounter? Which like
what skills and abilities am I gonna give them to like best like enable their special like niche? And
I'm gonna remember this. If ever I get into a fight or I'm about to get into a fight, I'm going to just like look at the opponent and just like big number and just like just and see what happens. That's all I could think of. Big number.
Somehow see, now I feel like if it hasn't been done already, which I sincerely doubt, somebody needs to do a video, like a TikTok of like different kinds of like gamers in a fight, and then like the ARPG gamer is it's just like heh, big number. Or it just
Yep.
straight up
Yeah,
holds up
like
a sign that has like that just says attack damage 2,348. Like
yeah, like there's all of the different kinds of people, like the people who are like stapling their build together on the fly, the turn-based person who's like doing the Robert Downey Jr. like Sherlock combat thing,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Then
and then like
there's like the
yeah,
virtual deck building gamer who like walks up, just throws a bunch of cards. Yep.
and then the ARPG gamer who walks up just kind of like is like and goes like and then like their opponent just explodes into a billion pieces, and and you get a crit for like 9, just like integer overflow, and then you get like the like, big number.
Or like they just have like two people walk into a room, have like an intense stare down, like they do like the full on like spaghetti western, like like shot, shot, then tight like close up shot,
Mm-hmm.
close up shot, eyes, eyes, and then they both yell a really big number at each other, and the one who yelled the lesser number goes, ah, damn, good GG man, and then like walks away.
GG man, just leave. The other guy pulls out his phone and starts build crafting again. Like
Yeah.
so that's very like the action RPG's experience is how can I build my character right now so that the only thing I have to think about is just rolling my face on the keyboard for the next 2 hours. Whereas like the like turn-based role-playing game kind of experience is what can I take into this to give myself the best chance at success during it.
I joke all the time that like with MMOs, I play DPS because I'm not smart enough to play anything else. But and like that's mostly tongue in cheek, but like in the reality of like what I mean is that I feel like being a healer requires a little bit of like requires a little bit of like a knowledge of how the actual system works, and I don't have either the knowledge in an MMO of like how the system itself works, nor the inclination to learn. And so I'm just like, you know what? DPS works for me because all I need to know is really big number and just run and hit stuff until either they fall down or I do. So like, that's it. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alistair, I think that was our setting from back when there was all the like the hate rating going on. We changed our settings so that we couldn't be rated unless we were mutually following each other or something like that. Yeah. I think we could probably change it, to be honest.
There's been a lot of changes to like Twitch's.
Yeah, that's just a setting we never changed back during that time. I'm sorry about that. Something we haven't really taken a hard look at recently, but yeah. But it's good you're here. I'm glad you're here, Alistair, and thank you so much for the thought, at least, if not for our own lack of attention to our own settings. But yeah.
Deal with that later. Yeah, I was gonna say, how is Dread? That's how good Dread is. But yeah, Alistair's been playing Metroid. Started playing Metroid Dread today, which they sent me a picture of them just holding the game the other day. I was like, yeah.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
We've been talking a lot tonight, just about how like video games have translated to like stuff in TTRPGs, and TTRPGs have translated to video games, and like the ways things that translate well from one to the other and things that don't translate well from one to the other. It's been a kind of fun conversation, pointing out like like what we enjoy about one game we don't enjoy when it's just kind of like put into a different kind of game, which has been a kind of fun thing, right?
Yeah.
What I'm doing is glorified spreadsheet management on a D&D character sheet, but it kind of ends there. Whereas when I'm doing spreadsheet management for like an MMO, it just feels like I am pulling my own teeth.
I'm gonna say something specific here from my own experience, and I'm glad that neither Nico nor Edgefit is here to make fun of me about it, but I'm sure Matt will. But like inventory management in Mass Effect, I hate it. God, I ignore it to my own detriment. Actually, I ignore it in Mass Effect. In Pathfinder, Kingmaker, or Wrath of the Righteous, that's like 90% of what I do. That's like every inventory management, and I love every second of it. I'm like, ooh, but if I give this person this, and then I give this person this, then that'll increase theirs, but this person can make use of their, and like, I love that. But in Mass Effect, I
Mhm.
fucking hate it. It's just horrible. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Fallout TTRPG, Alistair, because I mentioned it earlier, but I have no experience with it myself. I just know that it exists. I'd love to play it, but like I'm glad you mentioned it. Far better than the Wasteland Warfare version. It captures the essence of the Fallout universe. I'm not familiar with Wasteland Warfare. Could you actually, if you don't mind, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your experience with the Fallout TTRPG? Because all I know about it is that it exists, but I know nothing about it personally. Um,
Yeah, I know somebody else who made their own Fallout
yeah,
tabletop,
yeah,
like a D6 dice pool Fallout tabletop RPG that I was
hell
having the
yeah.
fucking time of my life with.
You know what?
Hmm.
The Walking Dead RPG has really turned me around on D6 dice pool systems. So I was never I understood the appeal, but it wasn't for me. But the Walking Dead RPG has taught me um, a lot about how versatile a system like that can be. And yeah, I've turned around. I've come around on D6 dice pool systems.
Yeah, I will say the design of that system is fairly elegant. You know,
Yeah,
Mhm.
the way that they've
Absolutely.
done like stats and stress and pushing rolls, and
yeah.
you
Mhm.
know, maybe there was a lot of math that went into that, or just like a lot of playtesting. I never know. Like, I'm always curious to know like
There
how
is
much math.
actually a section in the game that shows you the tables and your chances of success based on like how many
Oh
successes are
yeah.
required and also how many dice are being rolled. And that's great. I like having that because I understand both the percentage now and
Mhm.
also the system that is being used. I understand that the dice that the percentage is based on the number of dice that I'm rolling,
Mhm.
and that's enough for
Mhm.
me. I don't need to know how the math works because I've never been, frankly, all that good at statistics. That's like one of the main areas of math that I have learned about that I just didn't get, like fully didn't understand. Um, so I don't need to know how it works. So I'm glad they included a table in the Walking Dead RPG that just straight up tells me the success chance. That makes me very happy because it means I don't have to work it out myself.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated than rolling a single 20-sided die and going like and then figuring out the percent chance of success of that. That's way easier.
Hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
No,
No,
I
like like I think a lot when it comes to those systems in terms of like how you get bonus die, how many bonus die you get, how
mhm.
difficulty classes are set, and how you modify things is a
Mhm.
lot in like how those systems can make or break themselves.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay, Alistair says so there are technically two Fallout tabletop RPGs, three if you count Ike's, but the two official games are both by Modifius. One is based in the Wasteland Warfare skirmish game, and more like giving your characters and your squad a story. Okay. And the TTRPG that's good is based on the 2D20 system. That's the one that I was thinking of.
Hmm.
It really captures the environs of Boston and the official adventures, and it really makes it easy to create a region to play in that might be based on your own home. That's very fucking cool. I am pretty interested in that, and I do like Modifius's 2D20 system. I've only played it in Star Trek Adventures, but I'm curious about the Fallout one and also the Conan one. Those are like the ones that I'm like really interested to try at some point. But because I know that they use it for both of those too. But yeah, I didn't know about the Wasteland Warfare one. Um, the one that I was aware of was the 2D20 system. Um, that's super cool though. I love when
Mhm.
games give you like even one of the parts I never learned anything about how to play Outbreak Undead, but one of the things I liked about it was that it included rules for turning yourself and also your town into like creating those things in the game. And even The Walking Dead kind of has a version of that, although it's far less robust than the Outbreak Undead one. But it does exist, and I like when a game does that. I like when a TTRPG gives you those options.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because like those of us who are interested in like the zombie genre, Freeman can attest to this. Like the
Oh
number of
yeah.
times that we like in high school were just like sitting there going like, okay, but like what would we do if like there was suddenly like a zombie apocalypse? Well, how would we deal with that? And like we talked about those things, and so having a TTRPG recognize that that's the kind of thing their audience engages in and include it in there,
Yeah.
like that's great. I think it's
It really is.
my games
Like,
were based.
oh
Oh, sorry. Huh?
no, it just it feels good to have that I don't know what the word I'm looking for is
It
right
just
now,
feels
but like
seen. Yeah, it just feels seen.
there it is. Thank you.
Yeah. Alistair says my games are based in the region called the Erie Stretch, which is technically an official region mentioned in Fallout 3, the Pit. Okay. I just made it based on the southern coast of Lake Erie, the biggest focal point being the Glassed City, a play on my hometown's moniker of Glass City. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now, I really do want to try the Fallout RPG at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Mm-hmm. There's so many good games to try.
There really are, and I have no time to like. Not that I have no time to run them. It's just that is time for things that I should be doing other than TTRPGs.
Right. There's a finite amount of. I think, again, circling back around the whole topic, I think that's one of the draws of games like Baldur's Gate 3 is they give us like a simulacrum of that experience, but that we don't have to deal as much with scheduling or, that we can much easier pick up and play and then set down immediately. Like if I want to play one combat of Baldur's Gate, it's really easy for me to open the game, play through a scenario, and if I win, great, cool, I'm done. Or if I want to like replay it, maybe I can reload my save. But like I can play for 25 minutes, I can set the game down, and then I can, at the end of my lunch break, having wolfed my charcuterie down, and played a little bit of Baldur's Gate, like I can go back to what I was doing. Whereas like it's a lot harder to invite 6 people over to your house, play D&D for 30 minutes, and then be like, okay, goodbye everybody. Just saying hello and goodbye in the Midwest would take fully the 30 minutes.
Yeah. That's very optimistic of you, John. 30 minutes to say goodbye in the Midwest.
It's more. I really think it's more.
Listen, it's not the goodbye hasn't truly begun. It's just foreplay until somebody slaps their knees and goes, "Well, best get going."
We've had one goodbye, yes, but what about second goodbye?
Oh my god! Don't lie to me, John, because you know full well that even after the knee slap, well, gotta go. There's gonna be another 15 to 30 minutes in between like the door goodbye and the car goodbye. So
oh yeah, like I said, everything up to the knee slap is foreplay, and then the goodbye begins.
There you go. Okay, yeah.
I don't have knees anymore at this point. They're gone. I've been slapping my knees all day.
Fucking Avatar Aang came along and took away your bending at the knee.
I used to be a bender like you. But
I knew it was coming. I knew it. I sensed it.
Some real. I don't know if we've ever crossed Skyrim with Avatar universe before. That's different. That's okay.
No, the way that I said that really was truly unique. The goodbye hasn't really started until you're outside. Yeah, you get it, newly human. Like it hasn't really started until you're packing your things into your car and you're leaning on the passenger side and I'm leaning on the driver's side and we're still chatting over your car, and then you walk around to the driver's side and get in and start your car, roll down your window, and now I keep talking because you've had something that you remember, like, oh, by the way, and
Yep.
We're exceptionally good at it.
See, all you need to do is now average it out with an Irish goodbye. You take those.
You've got
And you've got a normal
Normal
fucking,
goodbye.
all right, well, I should probably get home. Okay, great. It was great to see you. All right, yeah, you too. Bye. Then you've got, that's what you end up with when you combine a Midwest goodbye and an Irish goodbye. You smash them together.
Yep.
Yep. I did actually manage a pretty normal goodbye at the con tonight, but that was missing because I was really, really tired.
Yep, that'll do it. That'll do it.
I just alternate wild.
Listen, it's a delicate balance to keep, and sometimes you err more on one side than the other. I get it. Like,
It depends on the setting, honestly, truly for me. Like if I'm hanging out with a bunch of friends, it'll be so fucking hard to get me out of that room.
Yeah.
Because I'm having a good time. And then
Mm-hmm.
if it's just like if it's like a more like work related thing or some people that I don't like really know very well, it's much easier for me to just be like, all right, well, it's been a real pleasure, but I should probably get going and like whatever it is. I should find some food. I should get some rest. I should, chat with some other people. But try Mexican goodbye. You say goodbye, you go inside, but when you come back out, your cousin is still in the lawn chair eating another plate of tacos because there were tacos
I
left.
feel like
it's been 3 hours.
I feel like the Puerto Rican version of this is nobody says goodbye because nobody fucking leaves. And then, like, around the time when somebody finally decides to leave, somebody else has just arrived, and it starts all over again. So, like,
Yeah.
that's the Puerto Rican goodbye.
So it begins again.
The Puerto Rican goodbye, the goodbye, really?
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's an old
Goodbye.
meme.
Oh, God.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Amazing.
That's, I feel like I was
We've
gonna say
arrived.
something. Huh?
And we've kind of arrived at the end of the show, too.
We
so.
sort of have, yeah. We're talking about goodbyes here, and
I know.
We're,
It's
we're like Midwest
I'm about
goodbying.
to do Irish.
Freeman's camera just cuts out. It's like, okay. No,
The Irish goodbye would just be clicking
No.
the stop streaming button mid-sentence.
No,
Like-
no. No. It was a joke. It was a joke.
Oh my God. God, what was I gonna say? It's probably not important, but yeah, that's it. That's the end of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's been lovely. This was actually a very fun conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's one I think would be very fun to revisit with a guest too, to chat about.
I think so. Yeah.
The game design, like get a game design friend in here, or somebody else who plays like TTRPGs.
I agree. I think that'd be fun. Thank you everybody for coming and hanging out. Some quick announcements / reminders of announcements. Actually, it's mostly just reminders of announcements. In case you were not here at the beginning of the stream, Tomorrow is Dead Season 2. We finally have an actual recording schedule. Recording begins on Monday, this coming Monday, and we're looking to build up a few episodes so that we can, because of scheduling, we'd rather break up recording schedule than airing schedule. So we're gonna build up a few episodes, and we're hopefully, don't quote me on this because it really does depend on like how our schedule actually holds up in practice, but we're looking to air starting in October sometime, just in time for Spooky Month. So, yeah, so that's currently the version of the plan, but we finally have a recording schedule. We're going to get that going. Everything else is in place. I'm very excited for you all to be able to see it, and honestly, to just start kind of coming back to these characters in this world. I'm very excited about it. So, if you were not here at the beginning of the stream, that was a thing that we announced. So, just keeping you continually updated on our progress on Tomorrow is Dead Season 2. We're finally here. We made it. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us tonight. As we've mentioned before, we're slowly starting to, like, back away from some of our socials. In particular, Twitter. So we'll let you know if we join a different one at some point.
Yeah, press the X on that one.
Man, he walked right into that one.
It's true. It's true. Um, we'll let you know if we end up somewhere else at some point. We're currently like, but right now, for the foreseeable future, Discord is really the best place to like get any announcements and keep up with what we're doing. Um, that's just gonna be that's just kind of the reality of what we're doing from now on for the foreseeable future. Um,
Weirdly, we've
so
circled around to not only Tumblr being relevant once more again, but also to like the days of like email servers and chat rooms being the principal way to communicate with other people.
it's
With other
time is a
people.
flat circle.
Yeah. Like it started with email chains and groups and AOL chat rooms, and we've circled back around to a more elegant version of
Started
those
from the
things.
bottom and now we're here, also on the bottom.
Also at the bottom again.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Again, look for any like updates and programming schedules and announcements on Discord primarily. We will see you all. Hopefully, are we doing Ramblemancy next week? I think we are,
I
right?
don't
I'm pretty
know.
sure we are.
I'm pretty sure we are. I this is why I hate like the con season, just because I have no idea at any given moment.
I think we are though. It's
I
on the
think
I
we
don't
are.
8th,
have
right?
a I don't have a con next week, so like I should be free.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have my weekends back for the next several months, and I don't know what to fucking do with myself.
I'll
yeah,
be here. I'll be
yeah.
around, y'all.
All right. We'll hopefully see you next week for Ramblemancy. Some more Ramblemancy. Um, maybe some game streams. We'll see. Probably not next week, but it'll either be Ramblemancy or game streams. Is what I'm saying. But if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Thank you so much, everybody. Good night and good zone.